Hey everybody, welcome to the Untitled Themed Entertainment Design Lockdown Show.
Themed Entertainment. It's like a kind of Marmite, but for theme parks.
How you doing today, Andy?
Good. How are you?
I'm living the quarantine dream here. Living the quarantine dream.
Who isn't?
Yes, exactly. So we got a big show today. We're going to be talking about Vegas a little bit later on. We're gonna give some time. We're just gonna stall here while we know we have hundreds of people that are going to join the feed.
Hundreds.
Yeah, it's another week is in the books, right?
Yep. Here we are, week 4.
What's so interesting is that you're used to working from home.
No, not home, but working by myself here in the studio.
I apologize. Yeah, working in your studio. So this really hasn't been too big of a. I mean, realistically speaking, do you have any I'm throwing you on the spot here, but do you have any top 3 tips for working remotely in the studio, kind of isolated, if you don't mind? I mean, I don't want to.
I did a Facebook post about it last month, half jokingly saying, well, just drink lots of soda and coffee and water so that you have to get up every 30 or 40 minutes to go to the bathroom, to keep moving around. But other than that, I mean, man, I really miss, I had lunches booked pretty much every day with friends and colleagues and stuff. And I miss that the most. But the top 3, the top 1 was drink lots of fluids so that you keep hydrated, and that gives you a reason to get up and walk around, move around a little bit. For me, I get to go up and down some stairs to my bathroom downstairs. And number 2 is try to keep the schedule. I'm usually pretty terrible about it. Mm-hmm. But I usually get up around 10 or 11. I didn't this morning because I was on another podcast for the opening of Disneyland Paris.
Tell me a bit about that. You kind of told me earlier, but what were you doing on the podcast? Who's hosting the podcast? All that kind of good stuff.
So honestly, I don't know who the host of the podcast was. I don't remember their names. I'm gonna look it up on Twitter right now. But so late last night, I got home late. My housemate and I were watching. We're just plowing through Mad Men, the old TV show, and so we were up late watching that. But I got home and I got on the Twitter, and somebody posted a video of the Four Tops and the Temptations performing at the on the opening telecast of Disneyland Paris, which is the 20th anniversary of the opening of Disneyland Paris is today. And sorry, I just got a text from Dave. And I hadn't seen that in many years, and then I commented, I'm like, oh my god, that's me, because I'm playing trombone right in the front. You can see me on the video from almost 30 years ago. And then this guy posted this other video of this 30-minute documentary about the All-American Marching Band, which I was in, and I hadn't seen that in a lot of years. Mm-hmm. And so I got really emotional. I was like laying in bed early this morning, watching this video, weeping quietly. And then I was chatting with him, and he's like, well, we're doing this show in 5 hours. Do you want to come on? And I'm like, sure. Because they were like, oh my god, you were there. And I'm like, yeah, but it was a long time ago. So I agreed to it, and it's this let me see what it was called. It was these guys at, I want to say DLP, what was it? DLP Report. At DLP Report, Disneyland Paris news, photos, and videos daily, and in English. Right? Tweets by Ben. I think Ben was the host. Nice. But there were this. I was on with 4 or 5 other people, and they did this whole show about the opening of the park with music and songs and guests and whatnot. But I think I was the only one who was actually there.
Were you? So you were a part of the All-American Band. Was that at Disneyland?
No, it was. As I explained this morning to them, it was normally it's a college group that performs at the Disney parks, but they expanded it to high school students because they needed so many kids, and they needed so many kids that could could come and pay their own way. And for me, it was like my senior trip because I was a senior in high school in 1992. And I was headed to USC the following fall already. I already knew that. So, and the band was directed by Art Bartner and led mostly by Trojan marching band members who, they just all just got drunk and whored around Paris while we were there, which was awesome because they were older.
Yeah.
But it was a crazy event. So anyway, I went with one other student from my school and a bunch of other kids from Orange County, and there were like, I want to say 350 people in this band. It was enormous.
Yeah.
And we were there for 4 or 5 days, and we rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. And then we had the day of the telecast, which started with the opening of the hotel, and then went on to all of the different performances and venues that we did that they pre-recorded for the actual live broadcast, which was the end of the day, which was the where we all march down Main Street, and then they cut the ribbon, and then we all run through the castle. And because I was in the front of the band, I was one of the first kids to actually run through the castle like 1955 style.
Wow.
And it was the greatest moment of my life. I remember it like it was yesterday, and it was truly, truly amazing, and I was very, very lucky.
That's great. So we can catch that on that podcast. But you know what? We're not here to talk about that, although we did. We're here to give you the so we started the show last week. This is episode 2. We're here to talk about the state of the themed entertainment industry. Really, if you're a fan of the industry, you can listen to it. But really, we're here, we're also here to just talk about what's going on. We had a lot of news this week that came out. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to run through some news articles and just give you some thoughts about it and go from there. So, we have Universal Beijing Resorts Tom sees a bright future. Resorts still on target to open in 2021. So Universal is still completely on track. At least that's what they're saying. This is a bunch of words, right? So it's really about the title. What say you, Andy?
Well, I mean, I think that Universal is making the right choice, and I think that continuing as full steam ahead as they possibly can on their projects, I think is the right choice because, as themed entertainment projects have a long, gestation and burn time and take a long time to design and build. And this isn't forever. We're not going to be in lockdown forever, and certainly one hopes that the economic effect isn't going to be as dramatic as the last Great Recession or the Great Depression. I really still have the fervent hope that when the lockdown is over, that it'll just kind of slowly ramp back up and everybody get their jobs back.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, certainly not many, not all restaurants or theaters or, entertainment venues will survive. But I think for the most part, everybody's just going to kind of just go back to work.
Well, yeah. And my thought, so what's interesting is that in Orlando, Florida, a huge thing I hear is Halloween Horror Nights. And I tweeted this out earlier this week where I just feel like knowing how they work, which is, they're constantly turning out that content. They have several fabricators and designers that are working. This is their big 30th anniversary year. And I feel like even though they are saying they're on track, it feels like we're probably not going to get as many houses that we think we were going to get originally. And I think there's going to be this last minute push probably in July when maybe the coast is clear to put a bunch of entertainment out there. So we might have more entertainment than we have had in many years, but a few less houses. And all these haunts are also going to have to grapple with the fact that people do not want to do the conga line. Brian Morrow said on an IAPA webinar or live stream earlier this week about how he's working with folks and they're just trying to figure out what does that look like. I don't want to be. It's uncomfortable as it is. I don't want to be completely, in a conga line with people behind me, below me. You don't want that right now. You know
No.
what I mean? What do you think?
I think that your point about the entertainment is a really good idea. I mean, there's certain things I can't talk about. I know things that I can't talk about.
Yeah, same with me. So that's the line we're always gonna have to tell on this show. It's just like coming to the line, and I'm like, oh well, hold on, I don't know all of that. You know what I mean?
I mean, they're the Marathon of Mayhem show was really popular last year. People really enjoyed that. And I think that and things like that, could really go a long way to fill the gaps, like you said, in the lack of preparation time for the houses and whatnot. Scare zones are much easier to build, than a full on haunted maze. So maybe we'll see more elaborate scare zones. I don't know. It's not terribly easy to mount a show either, a live show. I mean, a pre-recorded show like Marathon of Mayhem, where you just like you push the button, is one thing, but to like say like, oh, let's bring back Bill and Ted, that's a whole another thing.
I know. I'd love that. Don't talk like that to me, because I'd love to have Bill and Ted back.
Right. I don't mean to tease you.
I know.
Okay, and full disclosure, I don't know anything about that. I'm not alluding to anything about that at all.
Yeah, no, exactly. So moving from Universal, we have some news at Disney that came up. Disney stock downgraded over dim theme park forecasts. So we know the parks are getting hit pretty hard right now. They're shuttering down. What do you take? What's your take of this?
I think I was talking to some friends earlier this week on another show about how I was on the Mice Chat podcast earlier this week. We're talking about virtual queues and capacity versus capacity, and how if they are going to do just virtual queues, from everything from Rise to the Resistance to teacups, even just to prevent people from standing shoulder to shoulder in line together, then there's a capacity issue, because the park, because as like a third to half of the park capacity is in the queues and the attractions and F&B and retail and whatnot. I don't know. I think that when parks do reopen, I think it's going to be interesting to see if there's going to be limited capacity. Do you think maybe Disney will say like, okay, instead of 50,000 people a day, we're only going to let in 20? And then you have to make a reservation. There's no more hard ticket sales at the ticket booths. You have to pre-plan your visit. All the guests at the resort, hotels, all guaranteed to get in, but nobody else is guaranteed to get in. Maybe it's a lottery. Maybe, who knows? Maybe the scene that we saw at the Plaza and Main Street in the Hub, with people, like everybody's on their phones, trying to get a reservation for Rise, is going to be in the Esplanade on their phones trying to get into the park. Yeah.
Well, and I think that the first take of this is the first park to open up is going to be Shanghai Disneyland. They've already started to open up a little bit. So I think for clues of how domestic parks are going to handle it is going to be looking at Shanghai Disneyland. They've already put a lot of restrictions in there. They're keeping their social distance, which is an interesting take, is that the people of China are far more used to restrictions and kind of falling in line with whatever the government says. So I think that's going to be the first take of how the parks reopen up. It's going to be looking at Shanghai Disneyland. That's going to be the first shot across the bow to see how does these things come back online.
Well, the thing is that they're going to have their app, their scanner app, where everyone's going to have their all clear or not, that they can get into the park with, like they don't have the virus or they recovered from it or what have you. And we're just not going to have that. And if we do have it, it's not going to be for like a while. And certainly people are going to be resistant to it because America.
Well, and that's the thing, is like we could be going through all this stuff, and by October we might have a vaccine. We might. I mean, who knows at this point? It's really hard to say.
Well, I think what we'll probably see first is the antibody tests, and then maybe we will have a national database with an app in which we all everybody basically maybe you can only go to the parks if you test negative for the antibodies.
Yeah.
And then are we going to have people forging documents and forging,
Oh my
packs,
god.
just to get into the parks? I don't know.
Yeah, that can get a little dicey, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, next up, we had another story that we thought was good. So this is from Robert from Theme Park Insider, great source. Fun from. They pulled an image from
This is funny.
home and disaster loans. That's from like the back lot, right?
Yeah, that's from Universal Studios backlot from the War of the Worlds scene with the plane crash.
So we're not all doom and gloom here, right? We have a little bit of fun here.
Yeah, I just thought that was hilarious. Yeah, Rob always finds the good stuff.
So a little bit of light.
I also sent you another article just before we went online too about that Mark Cuban.
Okay, yeah. If you can vamp for 30 seconds, I can pull it up.
All right. Well, this other article we're going to talk about is an interview with Mark Cuban in which he talks about the long-lasting effects that the behavior of certain brands will have on their long-term, image, how they treat their employees mostly. And I wanted to talk about that as it relates to the dichotomy between Disney and Universal and how they're treating their employees, how they're handling the crisis, how they're responding to it, in terms of furloughs and layoffs and projects and all that.
Mm-hmm. All right, I got it. I almost got it pulled up, but basically, I mean, you summarized it up pretty well, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. So, hold on. Let me see.
We can talk about it some more.
Yes. All right. Pardon me. I'm juggling a few things here. Next week we're gonna have somebody in the control room. I hunkered somebody down. So yeah, how do companies treat their workers during pandemic could have defined their brand for decades. Which is interesting because we know that SeaWorld furloughed 90% of their staff pretty immediately. And we know that SeaWorld is kind of their own thing. They got some other issues. And so then we have Universal, which I'm hearing whispers of Universal, and sometimes I don't know what's like being told me in confidence, but they're getting wages cut.
Everyone's working, all the hourly and salary employees are working at 80% of their pay. All executives and everybody I know too. And then all the part-time people just got furloughed last week, I think, but like, I don't think that's very many people though. That's just like ride-ops and F&B people at the parks, maybe.
Well, it's so interesting because I don't really know. I don't pretend to know what the best way to handle it. Like, I don't know every piece of legislation. The rosy-eyed piece of me thought that all these companies were going to get bailouts, and so they were just. And Europe's doing this right now. A lot of other progressive or whatever. They're saying we're going to pay for 80% of your payroll. And you're going to keep everybody on. Everyone is all covered, and they're all staying employed, so that you can keep up during this pandemic. But the United States is means tested. It's complicated. It's bailouts. It's loans. It's a kind of a hot mess.
It's really sad, and I try not to think about it too much, just because it's being handled so badly, and it's all the way to the top. With our president who takes no responsibility, and it's just like, it's the federal government. These are states' issues, and it's just like, oh, dude, no.
Yeah. Well, and I want to be honest. Like, I think you and I align politically, very aligned. But like, it's everyone. Like, everybody's failed. A month ago, they should have been like, okay, we're stopping rent, we're stopping mortgages, everything needs to freeze, and everyone gets UBI. Done. Yeah. That would have been. Now we have, we had 6 million people last week that filed for unemployment, and those are the people that were able to. And this is going to have far-reaching. This is supposed to be a positive show, but it's just like this crazy thing going on right now.
But like I said, though, I really think though, like when we start to roll things back on, that like I think most people, are just gonna like go back to work and get their jobs back because, like all the theme park companies, and design companies that furlough people, and they're doing it in such a way. And later on, we'll bring on Peter to talk about the way Vegas is doing it. They're doing it so that they can just like literally just flip a switch and everybody comes back to work and they're in the system and everybody just like gets paid again.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good segue.
Yeah. So, well, we have a few more stories we'll run through.
Okay.
We were actually proven right last week.
Yeah.
So,
about the temperature thing. Yeah.
We had a story that came up really, like, honestly, like a couple days after Bob Iger starting to talk about potentially they could be doing temperature scanners as you enter the park, right? We had theorized about that. I think you and I both kind of agreed that that's kind of might be the future of this. So that kind of hit the trades, got a little Orlando Sentinel, they're national, whatever they do news. That was kind of interesting. Like we could be doing temperature scans to get into the parks, and there's different ways of doing it. It could be they do it remotely. It could be, I don't want to have a temperature stick in my head when I want to go into Magic Kingdom, but I don't know I don't know what the future holds really.
I mean, I think if they do the temperature scans, and I'm sure they will, I think that it's just going to be part of the rest of the theater of security, where like it's not really effective, but it's mostly just for plausible deniability and peace of mind for people.
Yeah,
because what happens?
That's depressing. That it's going to be that theater.
Yeah, it's the theater of security, the theater of temperature, whatever. But the virus theater. But I mean, imagine like you're standing in line in the sun to go into security for 30 minutes, and then you get up to the scanner and it's like your temperature is like 101 because you've been standing in the damn sun.
Well,
Yeah,
I don't know. Well, that is true. That is true though. Like if you're just walking through an area, but we'll move on. We'll move on to a different news, right? So I saw this article that I thought was really interesting. And it is again from Ken Story was on Orlando Weekly. History shows now is the time to invest in tourism projects. Are Disney, Universal, and SeaWorld listening? Which
Universal is.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting from what you were talking about earlier. Universal is saying that they're going gung-ho on projects, and I have not personally heard of anybody from Universal being furloughed, but we all know that the furloughs are coming to Disney. If not now, they're coming in a week, right? So
they're already happening.
Yeah, they're already happening. I was actually pretty surprised to see that that projects, but what potentially is that they don't want to have construction sites open because there might be liability there, what have you.
But Universal has construction sites ongoing right now.
That is true, and they're willing to take that on. That's the thing is I don't know what Disney is using for their formula.
I think that it's a liability issue. It's all plausible deniability, so that they can not expose themselves to lawsuits from individuals over exposure.
Mm-hmm.
I think Universal is playing the game well in that in Los Angeles at least construction is deemed an essential business.
Mm-hmm.
And so they continue because they've got so much money invested in the attractions that are under construction right now that like it doesn't make any sense for them to stop if they don't have to.
Well, and I think that we kind of talked about this earlier or last week. We talked about it, which was what are people going to do when they come back? So are they going to need something to draw them to the parks? So
new attractions.
New attractions, right? Yeah. Are they going to need new attractions, or is there going to be such pent up demand? I don't know. This is all speculation, but is Disney playing that? Are they playing that game where they're saying, "Hey, yeah, we know that people are just going to want to come back"? I really don't know.
Well, Disney's going to have the Marvel Avengers campus thing at California Adventure eventually, like later this summer, maybe in the early fall.
Mm-hmm.
But I think any plans for a new Fantasyland or Tomorrowland at Disneyland are now just like over,
right,
for the time being. But you know, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the all the other projects at like Shanghai with the Zootopia,
Yeah.
and all the stuff in Japan with the Fantasyland and the Frozen Arendelle stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
moving a little bit afar from Disney and Universal, we have Las Vegas, and we have a guest who has been willing to come on to the show. Peter, come on the show. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Andy, why don't you give a little intro to Peter so people know, who Peter is and all that kind of good stuff.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Peter is my cousin. He's my mother's brother's son, and I love him very much. And he's a great guy, and he lives in Las Vegas, works in Las Vegas, works for Caesars Entertainment, and I know that he has a lot of insight and knowledge and experience working in Vegas for a long time now, and I thought that he would be a really great addition to the show. To talk about how Vegas is being affected, how things went down, last month when you had to shut it all down, and how things could maybe turn back on.
Yeah.
So Peter, what say you?
Well, it's very interesting here. Things have been affected very greatly. Last month, it was a crazy escalation of events. Myself, I work in box office, so I work for ticketing for large events, smaller events throughout the city, and it was pretty crazy the amount of requests that started to come in. And I knew pretty early on that it was going to get pretty crazy, and it's all about how comfortable they are. This entire town depends on the Strip, depends on people coming here, and without that happening, nobody has a job, nobody's able to work. Like the day that I was let go or furloughed, if you want to call it, was the same day my director was, and pretty much almost everyone in the company, unless they were a VP level or higher or an essential employee. So that being said, it's pretty crazy. I mean, if you go down the Strip right now, every hotel is like boarded up. You can't get in, you can't get out. There's just Metro police there to make sure nobody's vandalizing anything.
I didn't know that.
It's just basically there's no reason to go there. The only place that people go are grocery stores or other essential businesses. So it's pretty interesting seeing how quickly our town was affected. And with the companies that work here, all of them, they want to stay open as long as they can, and they want to reopen as soon as they can, because it's all entertainment, it's all lodging, it's all, people being close together is the business basically. And the more people you can have in close contact, the more money you're going to make. So it'll be interesting, at least from my standpoint in ticketing and events. Like we had a bunch of shows scheduled for the rest of March and April. Yeah. So are those shows going to be stacked on other shows that were already scheduled later in the year? We don't know, it's going to be interesting for sure. And the other interesting part is Las Vegas has a very low wage rate. So a lot of employees don't get paid very highly. And a lot of those employees who are on unemployment now are actually making more than they were actually working. Huh. So are they going to come back to work for the wage that they would have gotten before? Who knows? It's pretty interesting stuff.
So you work in the box office, and do you have any thoughts about just, are people going to want to sit next to one another when we first get into it? Like, we could probably say that a year out, things might go back to whatever normal might be. But have you heard speculation about, how it's going to be, right?
So from companies' perspectives, I'm assuming will reopen as soon as they can, dependent on government legislation. So our governor here in Nevada has closed the state down until May 1st. And we have shows scheduled to go on as of May 1st. Those are smaller scale shows where you don't have as many people confined to one room. For the larger scale shows, at least for my company, most of them have been pushed back to June. There hasn't been any talk of, taping off every other seat or anything like that, because a lot of people purchase specific seats. So having to relocate that amount of people is not really feasible for most of our shows. I think the biggest impact will be entrance and exit, because half of the amount of people that go to shows here in Vegas like to arrive a little bit later, and half of them like to arrive earlier. So it's a constant juggle that we do to try to make sure we have a right start time to try to make as many people happy as possible. But I'm sure that there's going to be extra security precautions in the future. So how will that affect people coming and going? So
yeah,
it'll be interesting.
They might have like the temperature checks that we're talking about at the theme parks entry process and all that.
I don't know, because here in Vegas, it's all about debauchery. There's a lot of people who go to shows intoxicated or whatnot. So it's hard to gauge what they'll be able to do, I think that they'll take every precaution they can without affecting profits. So that's what I would imagine would happen. Yeah.
So then it's going to be up to like, what's the minimum requirements that they're going to have to meet by the state and local governments versus what people are willing to put up with, what they're willing to, what concessions individuals are willing to make as terms of like their personal safety. And it's like, is it just going to be like, people just going to take their chances and it's going to be like it was?
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on how comfortable everybody is. If they're comfortable enough to come out here and have a vacation and go to shows, be on the casino floor, then I'm sure that companies will be open. If it's 50% or more that don't feel that way, then I don't see it getting back to where it was until that's the case.
What's the state of the ground on morale? Like, how you're furloughed? Are you keeping in contact with your fellow, your fellow employees? Like, what's this?
Right. So it's pretty crazy because nobody has had to deal with this before, and with the amount of employees that Caesars and MGM and Sands and all these large companies have, it's almost impossible to do something individually for every single one. So it's kind of like a blanket statement whenever we get information. And basically, to my knowledge, almost most everybody who was part-time, full-time, or salary is on a temporary leave of absence or furloughed so that they qualify for unemployment. And that goes into effect after they use their PTO. And at that point, then they qualify. It's interesting though, because, I know that some people, they were just completely let go. Like a lot of people who are working on call, they just lost a job. So it'll be, and I think they did that because they don't expect things to come back around as fast as they were going.
You mean like dealers and slot hosts and things like that, or housekeeping staff?
Right, exactly. So originally, based on business demands, there was a first wave of people that were let go or furloughed. And then after that, there was a secondary wave. And then the third wave waited until basically we're good on operation sides. And everybody understands that they're not able to reach who they need to reach to get what they need. So then that's when basically the third wave happened. And I think coming back, it'll kind of be the opposite, except I think they'll stretch it out as long as they can to try to recoup what money they can. So when I go back, I foresee having to do more work to catch up what was lost and be stretched as thin as possible before being able to bring back some of my employees to help with that load.
What about construction in town? I know that some work continued on the Allegiant Stadium. What about some of the other casino hotel projects like the Sentosa and the Drew and it's the other one downtown on Fremont Street.
Binions,
Huh?
Binions or Resorts World, maybe.
Resorts World, and then there's the Cromwell.
Yeah. So, to my knowledge, construction has continued for the most part. The biggest one, obviously, is Legion Stadium. They're really pushing to get that done in time for July, and they foresee that opening going as planned, to my knowledge. Just because they've put so much time and effort and money into that stadium, I think they're also really banging on the fact that the events and the football season that's going to happen there will really bring a lot of people back to Vegas.
Yeah.
As for hotels,
Yeah.
I think they're still doing some of the minor projects where you don't have to be in close contact with people. One of the interesting things I heard was like Resorts World is still hiring for people for their opening. So I guess they're just planning to go as planned, but it's all day to day. Things change like every day here to where you don't really count on anything that you hear. So,
and we did have a news story. We saw that we can't really see it. Hold on. Basically, that MGM Resort sets the shows back to June 1st. Cirque Connect back online. That's I know you don't work for MGM Resorts, but obviously you keep in touch with them. Are you guys? Do you think that's June 1st is reality, or what are you kind of hearing on the ground?
As of right now, it is a reality. It's hard to tell. It's all about what the occupancy percentages are at the hotels. When this all first started, the main reason why people were getting let go and why things were closing down is because the occupancy percentage was just not there, right? So, and I could see why Cirque has pushed back to June, because their venues generally are anywhere from 500 to 2,500 people, and a vast majority of people right now are not comfortable in that setting.
Yeah.
So I could see smaller showrooms that hold, anywhere from 250 to 500 people opening up as early as May, provided that, we're not forced to stay at home longer than that.
Do you think that there might be a push in Vegas to have more intimate experiences for entertainment?
I could see that, but a lot of work would have to go into showrooms and places like that in order to make that a reality. That's something that has always been off and on here in Vegas, to where, they want an interactive bar and restaurant and showroom all together. But it's really hard to keep somebody in a location like that in this town for an extended period of time. So having to remodel and renovate to get that, I could see it being a thing in the future, but for now they just want to go bare bones to get whatever profits they can recoup.
Sure. All right, Andy, any last questions for Peter?
To your knowledge, I'm just curious. I have a thing for like casino and hotel resort operations. What kind of maintenance, if any, do you think is going on in the resorts and the casinos right now? And what do they consider essential staff, beyond like security?
Right. So I know that they are continuing routine maintenance, just because being up to date on what needs to be maintained is cheaper than having to fix a bunch of stuff at once. So I know that security is doing walkthroughs of every floor of like every casino every day to check on things. And then there's a maintenance, like a very bare bone maintenance staff that is maintaining what needs to be fixed. But as for like power, like all the lights and emergency lights are off for the most part and stuff like that. So
the casinos are literally just dark and they just have the work lights on.
Yeah, they have, whatever minimal lighting they can have on, stuff like that. I mean, I haven't been able to go into any casino or anything, so I can't verify that to be the case or not. But from what I know, that is the case.
Wow.
Well, there you go. Well, Peter, thank you for coming on the show. That was good to get an insight of that. Me and Me and Andy are both big Vegas fans, and I bet you next time I go to Vegas, I'll come say hi to you.
Yeah, please come on by, say hi. We'll have a good time. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks,
All
Peter.
right. Thanks. Oh, before we go, Peter, can you give a plug for your YouTube channel?
Oh yeah, I have a YouTube channel. It's called Lucky Pete. I just basically play slot videos and eat burritos because that's what I like to do. So check it out.
I'm
It's a
gonna
good
follow.
time.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much
Oh,
for
there's
joining us.
Frosty. Hi,
Oh,
Frosty.
yeah. There's my cat.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thanks for joining us. All right. Andy, that was great. That was cool to touch in it because, just to get the ground, to see how other places are doing. I know kind of how Orlando's doing, see how Vegas. Peter was really nice to join us for the show. But you know what? It's time to wrap it up. It's been a good haul. Next week's show, we're going to talk about something that's pretty close to your heart and my heart. April 14th, 2020 is the 20th anniversary of Men in Black Alien Attack. And so we've lined up. Go ahead. Who have we lined up for this spectacular show?
As of airtime, we've got two of my dear friends, Dave Cobb, who, as everybody knows, was the creative director for the attraction, and brought me on as composer. Essentially launching my themed entertainment career in a real way, and also my dear friend Jason Depew, who was on the opening ops team of the attraction, and I think we're gonna have a really fun discussion from all angles.
Yeah, well, and I got my start in operations, so I'm gonna like study, watch ride film, and all this kind of good stuff. I've read his treatment, the Dave Cobb treatment and script that he put out. I've used that in my own to even learn how to write for theme parks. So
and maybe we can have a new little bit of intro music.
Yeah, we'll do that. So check us out next week, folks. We got Dave Cobb and Jason on the show, and of course Andy, who was part of that. This is fun. We'll do it again, and thank you for joining us. We're going to be here every Sunday night during the lockdown in various states of sobriety during that. So thanks for joining us.
No promises.
What's that?
No promises.
No promises. All right. Thanks, folks.